The lighting not even might be fucked up. It probably will be fucked up. I'm just using natural lights today. It's just one of those days, you know? So I've been a mom for just over a year now. And I have some things I want to talk about. I have some beef, if you will. I want to preface this video by saying I love my child more than life itself. I love being a mom. I find it very fulfilling. I find it very enjoyable most of the time. And I'm going to follow that up with this. I hate that I have to preface talking about my experience with my mental health, physical health, anything to do with motherhood, basically, that isn't positive, and pregnancy, that isn't positive, by saying that I love my child. So let's jump into it. I think we can all already feel the vibe for the day. I'm just gonna put on a little lip balm quickly. I'm just using Plush Ritual. Okay, well, let me just go back to pregnancy, okay? While I was pregnant, I feel like it was pretty apparent that I wasn't really one of those people that was like, oh, what a whimsical experience. Like, there was parts of pregnancy that I really enjoyed, and there was a lot of parts that I was indifferent to, and there were some parts that I didn't enjoy, much like any other thing in life. I'm excited to hopefully one day be pregnant again, but that said, something that bothered me throughout my entire pregnancy was that the way that people would talk to me, I started to feel like, oh wow, it's almost like I'm no longer the patient and I am nothing more than like a vessel for a potential child or my child once I was pregnant. Maybe that sounds dramatic, but it just does become more and more apparent that it's sort of like your health is secondary to that of the baby. And I feel like, again, I hate that I have to preface this and I have to tiptoe around it and I have to like give a disclaimer every single time. It's simply exhausting. Of course, the health of the baby is extremely important, and obviously, if someone is choosing to have a child, keyword, this is a wanted pregnancy, why would the health of the baby not be important to that person? You know what I mean? Like, give me a break. Like, obviously that's important. It's just that the health of the mother, in my opinion, should be equally as important. And I didn't feel that way throughout most of my pregnancy. And I felt like whether I was talking to medical professionals, other people that had had children, reading things online, whatever, it was a lot of like, yeah, that might be uncomfortable, but what's important is that the baby's healthy and you'll be so excited to meet them and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, why does everything have to include that sentiment? Like, yes, obviously, this is like a given. Like, of course, it's great that the baby's healthy. Of course, that's very important. And even just the word, I could just go on in so many different directions right now. Even just the term of like, that could be uncomfortable. No, there's things during pregnancy, during labor, during postpartum that can be not just uncomfortable, excruciating, like extremely painful, extremely difficult to deal with mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it may be. And I just hate that it's summarized like this, where it's like, oh yeah, I mean, possibly. So here's what spearheaded this, okay? I am still breastfeeding at this point. So my baby is almost, by the time that this video is probably out, almost 14 months. And a few months ago, I went into the hospital because there was blood coming out of my nipple. Luckily, the lady that was my doctor there was super sweet. Like, she was really kind. She was just like, I think what probably happened was that when your baby was nursing, they bit down. They're probably starting to have teeth like underneath their gums. And that's probably what caused the bleeding. So she sent me on my way and she was like, just put some lanolin on it and it'll heal up really nicely. So then as my baby's teeth started to come in, they started to bite more frequently. And it was becoming extremely painful. And what would happen was that I would have like open cuts on my nipple, and then every time they would nurse, it would like reopen that cut, and then their teeth would like go into the cut, and it would just like bleed and bleed and bleed, and it would never get the chance to heal because obviously I'm feeding my baby multiple times day and night. And so it was just extremely painful. And I, at that point, started looking up like, what can I do about this kind of thing? I tried all the things that I read online about like what to do about this situation. I'm just taking my smoke reflex in Defiance and Temper, and I'm going to mix them like half and half, I think. And so I was trying all of these things that are supposed to help stop the baby from biting. But the issue, a lot of these articles say like, you know, when they bite, take them off the breast and say no or scream at them or whatever kind of thing so that they know that you're in pain, or say like no bite or whatever, and then, you know, give it a few minutes and then you can continue the nursing session afterwards. The issue that I was having, and am currently having still, is that my baby will not bite until they're done nursing. Like, there's no sign, this has been months, truly, there's no sign that they're about to finish nursing, that they're like tensing up to bite, like nothing like that. It's literally just like they're nursing. So sometimes they nurse for like 3 minutes, sometimes they nurse for 7. Like I truly can't know when my baby's going to stop nursing. If I take them off early, they literally lose it. They will bite down and pull as they're biting off. As they're coming off, rather, they are biting off my nipple, and then they'll release and they're done nursing. And so this has been ongoing. There will be like a week or 2 weeks in between where I can tell they're not teething as badly, so they're not biting the same way, and it gives my nipples a chance to heal. But for the most part, this has been ongoing for the past few months, and it's just been misery, really. Part of my frustration is, obviously, if you guys have been following me on YouTube, you've probably heard me talk about my breastfeeding journey in the beginning 8 million times. But I struggled with breastfeeding in the beginning, to summarize. And something that I really, really had a hard time with was that, again, online articles and medical professionals were saying to me, breastfeeding shouldn't hurt. If you're doing it properly, breastfeeding should not hurt. And now that I'm on fucking TikTok, I see a lot of moms saying the same thing. Breastfeeding shouldn't hurt. And I hate when people say, you know, to use nipple shields and lanolin when, you know, people are saying that breastfeeding hurts. That you just need to see a lactation consultant. You just need to have a better latch. Just saying, breastfeeding can not hurt. And breastfeeding can also really fucking hurt for a number of reasons. And so in the beginning, when I was just learning, that was what I was reading. Breastfeeding shouldn't hurt. And now that my baby has teeth and is clamping down on my nipple every single time we nurse, I'm seeing a lot of like, don't worry, breastfeeding with teeth shouldn't hurt and it shouldn't affect the nursing relationship. Okay, it does. And I posted about this online, being like, I hate how these articles basically say, okay, clearly we've written an article about it because enough people have come to us asking this question. So obviously people are struggling with this, but we're going to summarize this article by saying that it shouldn't hurt and it shouldn't be a problem and you should just keep breastfeeding. And also, did you know breast milk is the best thing for your baby? And it's just like, the way that all these things are written, and this is not just like I'm cherry picking information, this is overwhelmingly the majority of information that is written for moms. Don't worry, it's not really that bad. Sure, it's a little uncomfortable, but you can probably figure it out and it's gonna be fine because at least the baby's healthy. Like, overwhelmingly, that's been my experience. And so I posted about this online bitching, and I was like, I just hate this. Like, I hate that this is how people talk to you know, people that are pregnant or giving birth or having, you know, breastfeeding issues or whatever it may be, just any kind of postpartum issue. And I was shocked, and yet not really shocked at all, how many people DM'd me saying, yeah, when my baby started biting, I saw a lactation consultant, I went to my doctor about it, I did this, I tried all the things, blah, 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 but that was when I stopped breastfeeding. And so it's like, okay, overwhelmingly, anecdotally, people stopped breastfeeding when their baby started biting because it was so painful and they were not able to correct it. And yet, when you go online and you see articles about it, it's saying it shouldn't affect the nursing relationship. It does. It does affect the nursing relationship, among many other things. You know what I mean? For me, that affects like me being able to go through my day because like it's extremely painful all the time. It affects me wanting to be touched, or rather not wanting to be touched. It affects me wanting to be intimate with my partner because I'm in so much pain all the time, and because like it's just this constant throbbing that just reminds me that like, gosh, I don't feel sexy right now actually. And it makes it really difficult because every single time my baby wants to nurse, I'm literally dreading it. And I love breastfeeding. I love the experience of breastfeeding when it is going well. Again, I'm left with this feeling of like, why do people not care more about the experience of the mom, and why is it so much just glossed over? And so I just want to go back to when I was freshly postpartum. I remembered that I had to ask to be checked up for, like, to have my stitches checked up. And at first I was like, why did I never have an appointment for that? Like, did they just truly not give me an appointment? Like, is that just like commonplace that nobody was going to check up on me? But then I remembered that at the time of my like when I would have had my 6-week follow-up appointment, I had been around somebody that had COVID. So I had to cancel, can't go waltzing in at that rate. So I did. But then when I went for my follow-up appointment, eventually they checked up on the baby and they didn't check on me. And I was like, is anyone going to check my stitches? And they were like, we can. What? My body was literally ripped in half to birth a watermelon. I think I would like someone to check on my stitches. Yeah, if that's chill. It's just, this is insane to me. Like, it's as if this isn't like a major medical, for some people, the largest medical thing that they will go through in their entire life. Like, the way, and here's the thing. I'm not a medical professional, right? Okay. So I don't know. Is it that there are so few complications that it's like, yeah, sure, we can do the checkup, but it's not really going to be that big of a deal. I can almost guarantee it, because like if it was an issue, you'd know it was an issue. That may be the case. That may be why some medical professionals are so flippant towards it. Regardless, I don't know that. No one's telling me, hey, we can do a checkup, but like you're probably going to be fine. Usually there's like very little complications, blah, 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 whatever. And so another instance of this was when I was postpartum, I was getting some blood clotting. So when I would go to the bathroom, I would have blood clots come out, which is not, as far as I'm aware, uncommon. So at one point I had a blood clot that was like the size of like 2 golf balls. And I was just horrified, number one. I think I knew that you could have blood clots after giving birth, and that makes sense to me. But I was really shocked by how big it was. And it was just I could literally cry thinking about it. Like, it was a really emotional experience for me having that happen, because it was like, okay, I just went through this insane fucking medical moment. I've been healing and trying to take care of my body and bleeding and stitches and, feeling really shitty and sore and my nipples hurt and all of that kind of crap. And then when that thing happened with the blood clot, I was like, this literally feels like part of my body is like detaching and coming out of my body. And it was just like, I was so distraught over it. And I came out of the bathroom and I was upset. And Matt was like, why don't you just call the midwife? And I was like, no. Even that, it's like, so many people feel like, I'm going to actually say so many women, I think, brush aside their medical problems because medical people oftentimes brush aside their medical problems. So I felt like I was being an inconvenience by calling my midwife, because I was like, I'm sure it's normal. Like, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's whatever. And then I did end up calling them because Matt was like just pushing me to do it. And so I did end up calling them and I was like, this is what's going on. And they were like, yeah, you're fine. It was just like, they were so like, call us back if it gets to this point kind of thing, which it's like, of course, like I understand. I'm sure I have so much respect for people in the medical profession, and I'm sure it's extremely difficult being in that profession for a number of reasons, but I I can see how it would probably at some point become grating for people to be calling you consistently or coming in consistently to the hospital for things that aren't really that big of a deal and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like you have to say the same answer over and over again. But like the thing is, most people, I would venture to guess, don't just like waltz into a hospital because they're like, for fun, if nothing else, you know? Like, it's probably because they are scared genuinely about what's going on and they want answers. And like that to me is, yes. But then it's like, okay, this is how people get to the point where they have stage 4 cancer and people are like, why didn't you come in sooner? What? Because you spend a lifetime being told that like, you're probably fine. I'm sure it's not that big of a deal, blah, blah, blah. Like, again, maybe that sounds dramatic, but like to me, it's just like, okay, so let's say the blood clot thing wasn't normal. Let's say that was like, what the fuck? Why didn't you call? Because I had spent my pregnancy, my labor, my postpartum experience being told that like, yeah, you're fine. It's going to be fine. You know what I mean? And when I expressed concerns, I was consistently being told that. So if I had just said, okay, yeah, it's probably fine. I'm not going to mention it, whatever, it's going to be fine. And then it later turns out that that's actually a huge issue. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's how easily that kind of shit happens. And here's the thing too that kills me. A lot of the times I feel like as a society, we struggle to be compassionate towards one another and different experiences than our own. I feel like sometimes people that have a different experience in a positive way can really brush over what somebody else is experiencing because they're like, no, people say that, but like, it's totally fine. You know what I mean? It's not like that at all. Again, it can be not like that. Breastfeeding can be painless for some people, and it can also be painful for others. Like, your experience doesn't invalidate my experience the same way that my experience doesn't invalidate your experience. It's just like, no matter what, I get this feeling that we're just supposed to be quiet about it. Like, either because like you're not supposed to scare people, or it's not that big of a deal, or it can be different than that, or at least you're lucky enough to be able to have a baby. People need compassion. They need to feel cared for. They need to feel like somebody gives a shit about what's going on with them. And like this whole journey, this whole experience of becoming a mom was so overwhelming for so many reasons, positively and negatively. But if I can summarize the negative side of things, it's that there's this extreme lack of support. And I'm not talking lack of support from like the people in my life. I'm talking lack of support in general. There's a lack of reliable resources. There's a lack of reliable resources that don't have this sprinkled shame into it, which then I feel like causes people to not seek those resources. This is anecdotal, but again, I feel like there's a lack of care providers that are willing to be patient and talk you through all of these things that you probably don't know because you're not a care provider yourself. I feel like we've probably all heard the phrase multiple times that like, it takes a village. Where's the village at? I just would love to know if you could point me in the direction of where we're getting together to raise babies hand in hand. It's just like, it can be such an isolating experience. The whole fucking kit and caboodle, okay? The whole experience of like pregnancy and giving birth and postpartum and being a mom can be so isolating. And you can be made to feel that if something's going wrong, it's because of you. It's your fault. It's because you haven't done a good enough job. If your baby's not developmentally where they're supposed to be, it's probably your fault. You probably didn't read to them enough. If you're having a hard time with breastfeeding, it's because you can't get your latch right. It's because you aren't doing the right things. Have you tried talking to your baby like this? Have you tried telling them no? When my baby picks up a fistful of dirt and I say, no, don't put that in your mouth, they understand it about as well as when I say, no, please don't bite my nipple off. Here's another thing I have beef with. Also, I was going to film this for TikTok and I was like, I'll just do like a series of TikToks. And then I was like, you know what? No, honestly, there are some things that need to exist in a single 40-minute format. And it's this. I cannot summarize, and I don't think it deserves to be summarized. I feel so strongly about this. I'm just like going crazy over here. This is something that I think was born out of a necessity for combating misinformation. And I see what the intended purpose is. However, I think that there's an outcome of it that I'm really setting this up here. I think there's an outcome of this that can be less than positive. Pretty consistently throughout my, especially adulthood years, I've seen this messaging of like, vaginas are elastic. They stretch to accommodate and they stretch back into place. And having a baby won't change your vagina. And again, I understand that that messaging was born more so out of people being like, you've had a baby and now you're loose. Obviously, that's a fucking stupid sentiment. And I see why there is this need to communicate that that is a stupid sentiment. However, color me surprised when my vagina was very different following birth. For me, at least, my experience was that I knew that obviously there was a possibility that things could be different in that part of my body, but like, I was sort of like, but it probably won't. And that was kind of the bulk of it. Things are very different. And I feel like it needs to be talked about. And again, I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's just like, this is how things can sometimes go. Like, this is the reality of undergoing something medically that I would argue is a pretty major situation. So as I've said, I needed stitches. I did end up needing an episiotomy. So I have stitches like at the bottom, and then I had stitches at the top because it tore kind of like upwards. And then I had obviously the internal stitches. Even at that point when they said like, you know, we're gonna need to give you stitches and stuff like that, and we're gonna need to do an episiotomy and whatever, I was like, okay. I stitched her up. We're gonna need to close, you know, the gate to the upside down. Let's do it. But I don't think at that point that I was like, oh, this could potentially change things with my body. But when I was a few weeks postpartum, I remember touching that area and I was like, wow, that feels extremely different. Which, you know, you're swollen, there's some shit going on, you have stitches in, yeah, it's gonna feel different. But I remember this like one portion, the portion like on my like, towards like the top of my labia. I was like, that feels very, very different. And it almost feels like the way they stitched it together was perhaps not as aligned as it could have been. Basically, like if this was before, it felt like it had been stitched together kind of like this. And then once I was more healed, and I ventured south with a mirror, I was like, oh, that's actually exactly how that was stitched. Which, like, I don't necessarily care that it looks, that's actually not true. I do care that it looks different. This was my body for 29 years, you know what I mean? And like, you just don't, even if this is misguided, I just wasn't picturing it looking different, you know? And so that was, it is emotionally kind of shitty to deal with, but also it feels so different. So that area where it was stitched weird, I don't think that this is like medically what's going on. I mean, I have no idea, because I don't prioritize my own health. I prioritize my baby's health. Much like the world. But it almost feels like there's like exposed nerve endings there. More likely the nerve endings are just like severed, you know? But that's what it feels like. And so it almost has, like when that portion like rubs against my underwear or when I'm having sex or whatever, or even just like between my legs, like just hanging out, it feels like pins and needles, and sometimes it's just annoying and sometimes it's painful. The thing that I struggle with that is that, number one, it just sucks for something to be painful in your body. But number two, every time I feel it, it's like this reminder that of all of these feelings that I have, it's not like I'm like reminded like, oh yeah, I had this beautiful baby And I'm so lucky. It's like, I look at my child and I think that the pain that I feel on my vulva is not what sends me into some whimsical fairy tale moment of like, how lucky was I, you know? It reminds me of the whole experience of feeling like my body still feels like it's not my own. And it's almost like the feeling of being touched when you don't want to be touched. That's the feeling emotionally that it gives me. So that's kind of fucked up. And then the area that I had the episiotomy and stitches put there, I'm trying to do like a more sheer coverage thing here because like I'm just not feeling very great about like how my skin looks when I put makeup on. It's really like getting me down. But the area where I had my episiotomy, it feels like that area is scar tissue that is really, it's like a tense muscle almost. That's kind of what it feels like. It can make sex quite painful. And I feel like I'm going to talk about this and people are going to be like, go see a pelvic floor therapist. Certainly. That's something I could do. It's something I probably arguably should do. God, I'm tired. I truly, like, emotionally, I don't know why I'm so weird about this, but like, I do know why I'm so weird about this because I went through something that was fucking life-changing and it was difficult and it continues to be difficult. Through this whole like pregnancy, giving birth, postpartum experience, the last fucking thing I want to do is, even though I'm experiencing pain, is go into a room, talk to somebody about these issues, be brushed aside or not, doesn't really matter. The aftermath is that somebody's going to stretch my vagina. Like, it's just like, I am so sick of being touched. I'm so sick of like continuing to have to deal with these issues. And like, I would almost at this point rather be in pain than have to go back into any kind of medical office about it. It's just like emotionally not what I'm down for right now. It's obviously shooting myself in the foot to not go see somebody about this. And I'm sure that at some point I'll feel more ready, but like right now, that's just my experience. And I hate that it's almost like either don't complain or don't complain unless you're gonna go do something about it. And it's like, sure, is it frustrating for people, I'm sure, to like get on YouTube and see me crying for the 40th time about something, but then like not doing anything to help myself? I'm sure. Is it frustrating for my husband to listen to? Probably. Sometimes you need to vent about your partner without being told to break up with your partner. Sometimes you need to vent about how you hate being sick without being told that you're lucky you have a body that can get sick. But I just have to say quickly, for all of this being kind of dismayed about some people that I've had as care providers, my doctor, like my GP, is what a woman, truly. Like, and it's sad almost because she's an incredible doctor, but I shouldn't have to rely on having this like one care provider only, because in general, the way that we care for people should be so different. The way that we care for people physically, the way that we care for people emotionally and mentally needs to be so different. And I'd love to see changes there on a global scale, but in the meantime, I would love for people to be more understanding and patient and compassionate for one another and for experiences that are outside of their own. And I feel like this desperately needs to be said anytime I talk about this. I believe the statistic is that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth. Indigenous women in Canada, similar ongoing issues. And it's just like, if I'm on the end of the spectrum of women that are cared for the best, I'm white, I'm cisgendered, I'm straight. So knocking off all of those boxes, I'm on the end of the spectrum of people that are treated statistically the best. It makes me so angry thinking that that spectrum only gets worse and that this end is already so fucking broken and fucked up. It's infuriating, really, that anybody has to go through what people go through during any kind of medical issue really, but like this whole experience of pregnancy and giving birth and being a mom and postpartum and all that kind of stuff, like the lack of support is just insane to me. And the lack of care provided and solutions provided, and like, God, I don't even want to get into this because it just makes me so livid. But this whole fucking situation happening in the States, somebody DM'd me, and I had been posting about the Roe versus Wade thing, and I'm sure if you know me at all, you know that I'm so, like, unbelievably against that being overturned. But somebody DM'd me because I'd been posting about it, and they said something along the lines of like, I disagree with your opinion, but I still love you. Today was a great day. And they had like the emoji, the smiley face emoji with hearts around it. Oh, and I blocked that person. And then they emailed Oric being like, I am so disappointed that as an adult, Samantha can't accept somebody politely disagreeing with her opinion on something. I'm looking around for my bronzer. It just hit this specific thing for me where I was like, wow, what a perfect representation. I didn't finish my brows, I'm realizing. What a perfect representation of how it's just fully fucking glossed over that millions of people just lost some rights, regardless of whether or not you personally would choose to have an abortion, which, I mean, it's all been said a million times, truly, but like, you cannot know. You can't. Whether or not you think you do, because like right now I could say to you, I don't think I would have an abortion. I don't. Like, in almost any scenario, I don't think I would choose to have an abortion. I know that I cannot know that. I can't. If the circumstances were just so that I would choose to not have an abortion, and neither can you. Like, you may know in your heart, like, I would never do it. I wouldn't. Whether or not you're, pro-choice or not, you cannot know anything until you're in that situation. The same way that before you're a parent, you're like, I would never let my kid have a temper tantrum at a restaurant. I don't know, maybe you won't, but like, more than likely, you cannot say that you wouldn't do something because you do not know what you would do in that situation. It's so different looking at something from the outside and trying to give your perspective on it and trying to make a decision on something that you're not actually currently experiencing. I've been sitting here for more than an hour and I could go on. That's my rant for today. But hey, long time no chat. Hope you guys are doing well. How's everyone's summer going? Or if you're in other parts of the world, I think it's like your winter. Other than this whole breastfeeding debacle, things kind of aren't going okay, if I can be so frank. I'm gonna finish up my brows while I have my final complaints. Things kind of aren't going well. I'm actually not feeling very good, and it could potentially be contributed to the fact that my nipples are constantly bleeding and bruised. But my depression's been creeping back around, which is just annoying because I feel like I don't want it to anymore. I think depression was like a cute season that now needs to end. And it just doesn't seem to do that. And it's funny because I'm on fucking TikTok now, so go follow me on TikTok if you want to do that. But people have been saying, I said something on TikTok about like depression, basically. I made a jokey, fun meme, and people are like, oh wow, like I really thought you were like doing so much better because you've been posting so consistently. You're so good at your job. And yeah, it's this funny thing, and it's so easy to make it look like you're doing fine. And I will say there are pockets of my day in which I am doing fine and I'm able to be more productive. And here's my final thing about the breastfeeding thing, because I think a lot of people probably be like, you can stop. I know I can. I really don't want to. That's the thing. Like physically, oh my God, I want to stop more than anything I've ever wanted to do in my life. But like emotionally, I do love breastfeeding. Like I love that whole experience with my baby, and like it's something between just them and I, and it sucks thinking about having to stop when I'm sure there will come a time where it gets better, and I just like don't know if I'm ready to. Okay, I'm really happy with how my base turned out, actually. I'm not sure how it's looking on camera, but in person I feel like it looks really nice. I'm not sure that I'm ready to give that up. I will never stop crying on YouTube. And that's just a little about me. Thanks so much, guys.